AskReddit by Snoo0dal. People who are no longer best friends with someone. What happened? I'm not completely sure. Our mothers have been besties since elementary school, and they had us a month apart, while we were night and day, personality wise, and probably should have been the complete opposite. We were besties, too, closer than sisters, from birth until we were 25. She had gotten married a few years before, moved a couple hours away and had her first baby, so naturally, our dynamic had shifted some. But I was still under the impression that we were as close as ever the night she called and told me that her life had changed. She no longer had time or energy for a friendship like ours, and that she pretty much just didn't want me in her life anymore. There was no falling out. We hadn't had a fight since we were teenagers. There was nothing that I could pinpoint, then or now, that led to her decision. But it broke my heart and I grieved the loss 4 years after. That hurts. I'm so sorry. She slept with my then boyfriend. The most boring tragedy of my life. Oh yes. I had one of these. My boyfriend alienated me from every friend or potential friend except for the one he eventually cheated on me with. Don't miss either of them tbh, and it was a great lesson in keeping a wide network of wonderful people. I'm grateful that I learned it at a young age. She was toxic and abusive to me for years, but I made excuses every time. The last straw was when she was incredibly cruel to one of my other best friends who was actively dying of cancer and then painted herself as the injured party. I put up with being treated like shit for 20 years, but to treat a dying woman like that? I was immediately done. Do we have the same friend? Except mine was cruel to my friend who lost her mum to cancer a little before. That was a deal breaker for me. Girl, bye. Prepaid cell phone plan. It's 18 years ago at this point, but my then best friend pocket dialed me while my phone was laying on the desk in the classroom. I was in a different part of the school working on a project. Some of the guys in class answered the phone but didn't or forgot to hang up when they realized no one was on the other end. The call ended up lasting LNG enough that his rough $25 on the phone plan was used up. He ended up calling me the day after, calling me all names under the sun and where I could go to fuck myself. I had no fucking idea what he was on about, and when he explained that his phone plan had been emptied I offered to just pay it back. Got told to fuck off. Never talked to him since. I even met him at a train station a few years later, smiled and waved at him. He literally turned around and walked away, waiting for the next train instead of taking the same train as me. I guess our friendship was only worth $25 to him. You dodged a bullet, 'cause the fuck? He tried to sleep with my wife. Knew him for 30 plus years when he tried to sleep with my wife. Tried how? We just grew apart. I think I reached out to her once to ask how she was doing and didn't really get a response, so I just kind of decided that was that. Same. One of my oldest friends got married. Cool with him and the wife. They asked me to be the godfather. I moved abroad but always kept in touch. Sent gifts down for my godkid. Moved back, hung out once. Made multiple attempts to hang out with them but I was always left on read or just ignored. Reached out for I could drop off Christmas and birthday gifts for their son. Ignored and or left on read. Godkid's grandparents live a few blocks from my parents' house, dropped by, left the presents with them. 7 months later not even a thank you or follow up text from the parents. I decided to just walk away. My parents tell me I'm being overdramatic as people change when they have kids and are too busy with their lives. Except I have another friend with 2 kids who lives 2 hours away who I have seen 7 times in the same frame of time. And even he and his wife say it's utter nonsense and that if someone wanted to see you they would make time for you even with kids. After more than 20 years of being besties, she just ghosted me. After a year of not hearing from her, despite reaching out, I asked her husband if she was okay. He was confused because she claimed to be talking to me all the time. Whatever. It hurt for a while, but she honestly brought very little to my life in hindsight. She was probably cheating on her husband and pretending to be going out with you. We just grew apart and no longer had the same interests. Yeah, it was the same with me. He dropped out of high school and I was not going to take his path in life. I stopped paying. Oof, this is a whole story in a sentence. She got married and cut all contact with me. 20-year friendship tossed aside like a used napkin. 3 times we, my wife and I, really helped friends through a divorce. Of the 3, 2 were women and 1 was a man. For one of the women, I was almost a surrogate husband for her, platonic, and for her kids. We would go do things as families. My wife doesn't really like leaving the house, so often it was me and my kids and her with her kids. Hikes, auctions, picnics, things like that. The 3rd, a guy, we were close friends for like 5 years afterwards and we'd hang out a lot. All 3 of them found someone and got remarried and we almost never hear from them again. I mean, I understand it, but it still hurts a bit. I was in a group of friends who started bullying a person I knew out of nowhere. I told them I was not okay with that. They soon started hanging out without inviting me. I am still very glad I did what I did. Edit, typos. Even adults will do this. I once stood up for a woman at work that nobody liked. I wasn't too crazy about her myself, but they were being really unfair and all I did was try to point out how they should try to see the situation from her point of view. That put me in Mean Girl's permanent doghouse, which didn't affect me with too many co-workers, since I worked with mostly a good bunch, but I had to work with her directly. But then she became buddy-buddy with our new supervisor, and I could suddenly do nothing right. I basically had to leave for my own sanity. Nothing like being in your 50s and suddenly being dropped back into high school. At work. After high school ended, he became too busy. I invited him over every weekend. Each time he said that he'd come, but didn't show up. After a year of him not coming, I stopped inviting him. When I stopped people pleasing and set boundaries. Same here. I realized it in my early 20s. Set boundaries, started telling people no, etc. I lost contact with like 4 separate circles of people after that. Fortunately, I still had friends that respected my boundaries and we still talk to this day. My circle of friends is much smaller now, but I'm a much happier person as a result. The arsehole got cancer and died on me. Just because you get cancer doesn't mean you can die and abandon your friend, dude. Sorry for your loss. Fuck cancer. Would bust my balls in front of attractive women to make himself look better. I was always confused because there was 0% chance of competition. There's a point where it gets old and you never look back. Did you tell him that? One of my old BFFs thought drinking and driving was a competition. No thanks. More like how many speeding bumps or bowling pins you can hit in one night. Deleted. You should send her a congratulatory note on her pregnancy, telling her that he's going to be a great dad. My best friend was cheating on her boyfriend, who was also my friend. I told her she had to stop, tell him, or break up with him. She continued to cheat. One day he asked me if she was seeing someone else, and I couldn't lie. Years after that we hung out a few times, but obviously it was never the same. Don't remember that last time we spoke now. As a guy who had this exact same thing happen, thank you for being honest with him. I lost 100 pounds. She didn't, and accused me of deliberately changing. Well, yeah. I worked with this guy years ago and his partner was really fat. He was also a bit fluffy. They loved to eat and go to restaurants. One day his partner got his stomach stapled and he lost like 300 pounds. They broke up a year later. The hardest part when a longtime friend stops talking to you entirely is when you don't know why. You assume that it may be that a mutual friend said something about you that isn't true, but you'll live the rest of your life not ever knowing why. I feel this. And then you never have the chance to make it right. When I realized the friendship was toxic, whenever I would hang out with her, I would feel drained. I became her therapist. Wow, same. This has happened to me a few times, and it's exhausting and sad. I hope your life has improved without them dragging you down. He became addicted to cocaine after his father died. It warped his personality, and he was constantly angry and bitter. He was unpredictable, and genuinely scared me because it felt that it would be very easy for him to do something that would ruin his life in an instant. Also refused any help offered. The only thing I could do was move on. Sometimes, tough love is what addicts need. Actual Nazi. Like swastika graffiting, seed healing, learned German Nazi. Was he always like that? Meth happened. Same here. I stopped and she didn't. I still check up on her every few months to make sure she is still alive, but we don't really have a relationship anymore. When she lands herself in jail, I send her a few bucks for commissary because she really doesn't have anyone in her life that she hasn't burned. And the only reason she hasn't done it to me is I live 1,000 miles away and refuse to let her stay with me until she's 100% clean and can prove it. I love her to death, but she loves meth more. We'd been best friends for 40+ years. I was always the one to run to rescue help her, even when her husband was holding her and the damn baby at gunpoint. But she was also very critical and a bit of a snob, like her mom. She would tell me to throw out my shirt because it was too worn out, get a pedicure because my feet look like crap, wear a different lipstick because the color looked horrible on me, etc. So one day I just decided that I needed to talk to her about how she treats me, and asked her to meet me at a restaurant near her house. I was so nervous and upset that I was already crying before I got to the restaurant. I explained that she really needs to keep her opinions to herself, be more subtle with her comments, offer to pay for pedicures for both of us, or ask if she could give me advice on something. Anything was better than what she had been doing. We left the restaurant after she apologized, gave me a hug, and we went but separate ways. She called me a couple days later and said I was too negative, never heard from her again. Seems like usually those people can only dish it. I was in a horrific auto accident, coma for a week, ICU for a month. The person who was my closest friend never came to see me when I finally got home, wheelchair bound. When he came over, his first question was what kind of drugs did they give me? It was supposed to be a joke, but I told him that we're done being friends and not to come back to my house ever again. That was 7 years ago. Edit, 17 years ago. Damn, I'm getting old. As to the support in the comments, I appreciate it. It was very difficult for me to sit there and tell the person that I no longer wanted to be friends and to leave and never come back. I was lucky to have support of close family which helped ease the pain of losing a friend. I had a bunch of acquaintances that disappeared after my accident and during my recovery, so I took the position of good riddance. Hey, just sharing some empathy. Was bedbound after surgery for over 6 months, had to learn to walk again. Friends all disappeared 5 years ago. How are you doing now? It has taken me a long time to get close with friends again. The question I ask myself is, if my friends don't show up for me in a life-death situation, what's the point of friendship? I hope you've found better ways to answer that question than I have. She just stopped talking to me in COVID. I was in her wedding and we had been roommates. But then she told me weekends were for her husband, which actually meant weekends were only for other couples. A mutual friend got married and didn't invite me to the wedding, and we never spoke again. My friend did the same. Just stopped talking right before COVID. I texted him just before everything really shut down and said he was trying to finish some things and had to stay at school. I told him to be safe. That was 3 years ago and have not heard anything since. She was an insufferable narcissist and I was too young to understand. Yup. Friend in college got mad at me for not talking to her about a literary journal she was a part of after they'd just rejected all of my stuff. I told her I'd talk to her about it the next day, but I just was very upset about being rejected. She called me a horrible friend for being so selfish. I ended the friendship the next day. The next year they rejected me joining the literary journal because she told them that I stopped being her friend because I was rejected from the magazine. I had to go to the dean who reprimanded the teacher for listening to rumors and basing who gets on the magazine based on rumors and not merit. They died. I'm so sorry. I found out through one of their friends she thought wouldn't share. She had slept with my past 3 boyfriends and I was in the same house sleeping one of those times.